Why do strong, independent women struggle in love?
The suicide rate for men far exceeds that of women. Now, why would that be? Because working, but emotionally, maybe you feel empty, maybe you feel hollow, and maybe you start to question, what is the point of all of this? Why am I even doing this?
What are the top 3 things that a woman must do to survive, thrive, and sustain herself in an environment like this?
Tell me if this person, if my life partner is not going to be utmost supportive of that, I don't think this is going to work.
Do you think in this generation, men really know how to love, respect, and honor a strong, independent woman?
We get so conditioned to be tough on ourselves, and we go through our lives thinking, if I'm tougher on myself than anyone else can be, that's how I'll be successful. That's how I'll make it. Go home today and have this conversation with that person that you really love and just ask this one question. How can I love you better? How that yes or no feels in your body, I think, is a really easy way to know. Is it truly kindness, or am I just doing this for validation or for people pleasing? We teach our boys to own their power, to, go out there and take charge and take risks. With our girls, we're always protecting them, and, we don't encourage them to do all of that. Most powerful choices you can make is to form strong relationship with your future self.
Namaste. Welcome to the Journey Within podcast with me, Shobha Rana. I'm an emotional intelligence and mindset coach. That is, I help people get unstuck with difficult situations that they're dealing with in their lives, in the space of their relationship, careers, and more, by helping them understand their emotions deeply, decode them, understand the patterns, and break through to design their best life. The idea behind creating the Journey Within podcast is very simple. It is to help you create your best life. And how do we do that? By taking the journey within, by understanding from within who we really are, how we understand our thoughts, feelings, emotions, life events, how we process them, so that we have a clear understanding of where we stand today in life, so that wherever we want to go, whatever our dream vision of our life is, path to go there can be charted out. In today's episode, we are talking about strong, independent women. What are strong, independent women really made up of? What are the choices that lead them to be where they are in their life today? What are the adjustments that they have to make? How to build unshakable confidence as a woman? How to rebuild your identity and show up in the world differently today? How can men in your life, this is where it gets important for men to listen to this conversation, that how can they support and be an ally for a strong, independent woman in their journeys and build a beautiful home and beautiful relationship? So this conversation is relevant for all the women and men who know, understand, and want to learn the challenges of a big career identity and personal identity. Do watch this conversation till the end, because it will give you deep insights and takeaways to, like I said, recreate your identity as a strong woman. We have also tried to understand the characteristics of a woman. Those are not rewarded as such in this man-dominated world, but are most necessary for her to honor her most authentic self. What does your most authentic self look like? What is vulnerability for a woman? And we have explored multiple things, like creating boundaries, healthy boundaries for yourself, balancing personal lives versus your careers, and more in this conversation. Today, we have a conscious leadership expert and the founder and CEO for Shenomics, that is a mindful leadership platform for women. We will be deep diving into challenges and opportunities for women in this conversation. So let's tune in. The guest for our today's podcast is a conscious leadership expert and founder and CEO for Shenomics, that is a mindful leadership platform for women, Bhavna Toor. Before we meet our guest, a humble request to you. If you like our podcast, if they add value to your life, because that is what the entire point of this podcast is, please do consider supporting the channel by subscribing to the channel, like, comment, and share these conversations so that these meaningful, life-changing, perspective-altering conversations can reach to many more people. And now that you have clicked that subscribe button, let's meet our guest. Please welcome Bhavna Toor on the Journey Within podcast. Hi, Bhavna.
Hi, Shobha.
First up, thank you for traveling all the way down from Singapore to here to shoot this podcast with us. You're one of the leading voices for strong, independent women globally. And I want to break through this stereotype of strong, independent woman also. I am also one. You are one. There are many women who are stepping out of their comfort zones, becoming strong every possible way, physically, mentally, emotionally, career-wise, financially. And when you want to become a strong, independent woman, there are certain choices that you make. And there are certain things that you put on the back seat. Tell me first up, why is a strong, independent woman feeling exhausted?
Thank you, Shobha. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. And when it comes to what we're putting on the back burner, I think as a strong and independent woman, we're so focused on what can happen is we're so focused on doing. And we just get lost in the doing, whatever it is that we're doing at work or whatever we're doing at home. In my line of work, when we talk about conscious leadership, one of the most important conscious choice you can make is that you also focus on your being, not just the doing, but the being. Because, Shobha, we're not a human doing, we're a human being first and foremost. And what I mean by being is to ask yourself, who would I like to be as a woman? Not just what would I like to do that will earn me validation or rewards or recognition or praise, but who would I like to be? How would I like to show up in the world in a way that gives me peace of mind? Forget everybody else. In a way that gives me peace of mind. And when you bring clarity to that what are the kinds of qualities I want to embody? What are the kinds of qualities I want to express in the world? Maybe it's joy, maybe it's playfulness, maybe it's kindness. The more and more you bring clarity to that, and the more intentionally and consciously you express that, Shobha, then irrespective of what you are doing, you will find you will have boundless energy to still keep doing as well, but it'll come because it'll come from a place of alignment.
Let me take you to the flip side of this question. So what you're talking about being is being really soft with yourself, the softness to a woman, the feminine side of her.
Yeah.
But we are living in a world that is not, or that was not designed for women. So the rules that the world plays by, the things that earn you rewards and recognition, fame, and money are the things which are in the masculine space. So you need to have certain kind of strength to yourself. You need to have certain kind of assertiveness. You need to have certain kind of maybe rudeness. You need to have certain kind of those attributes which will make you a big player in this world that was not designed for women. So where are the women going wrong? Or if they choose to be kinder, if they choose to embrace their feminine side, their softness, and lead by those values, will she really be able to make a big dent in the workplaces or in the world as such?
Yeah, I mean, that's such an important question to ask, because you're right. The workplace in many ways was not designed keeping the woman in mind. And as women, we somehow just forced ourselves or contorted ourselves to fit in But because it doesn't always feel authentic to us, it does in many ways it feels like we're taking our power away, that it's taking our power away. So to answer your question, and let me give you a research-backed answer to this, because it's not just my opinion. A few years ago, these two researchers wrote this fabulous book on doctrine. What they did was they traveled around the world to, I think, over 66 different countries, asking people, what kind of leader do you want to be led by? And they gave people a set of qualities, which they then categorized as masculine qualities, traditionally masculine qualities, like being very, decisive, being very assertive, authoritative even. And then and equally a set of feminine qualities, such as compassion, kindness, humility, patience, all kinds of qualities we would typically, traditionally associate with women, although I will add, anyone can embody these qualities. It's not just that men are always, going to be the tough ones and women are always going to be the soft ones. Anyone can move any quality. But the point of this study was to if we just look at the kinds of qualities people want in their leader, what emerges? And what emerged was, especially when they compiled a list of top 10 qualities that people across the world want in their leaders, 8 out of 10 qualities that people mentioned were in the category of feminine qualities. Things like collaboration and patience and kindness and all of those beautiful traits. All this to say, Shobha, that the kind of world we are moving into, more and more people, especially the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, they don't want to work for, they want a kind of a culture which is very inclusive, where they can be themselves. And over the years, I've seen women leaders in particular do a wonderful job in creating such an environment, especially when they fully own and embrace their authentic selves and the authentic way in which they want to lead. So yes, there is space to lead, for women to lead in a way in which they want to lead.
I understand, and thank you for sharing that study with us, because I do believe that especially the generation that is coming up next, the Gen Zs and the Gen Alpha, they're definitely looking for the workspaces. Those are more kinder.
Yes.
Those are more inclusive in that manner. But you've worked on the Wall Street for 10 years, right? You were a senior manager, a vice president of an organization there for 10 years. So you've seen that culture, you've been a part of those boardrooms. I have been part of some of those boardrooms, right, where you see prominence, where you see these important people making these important decisions. And on the parallel, you have been a part of rooms where ideas like vulnerability, authenticity, softness, kindness are being discussed as leadership traits. Do you think today, at present, we have a world where there is really a space for somebody with softness, whether it's a man or a woman, to lead? Or these are just fancy ideas being discussed in privileged rooms where you can just, have this conversation for about an hour and then have a good buffet brunch or something like that?
Yes. No, I would say, Shobha, absolutely. I think we are seeing more and more leaders, male and female, embrace leading with vulnerability. I think as far as male leaders go, the best example I like to cite is of Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. I mean, when he came into the picture, he very palpably shifted the culture inside the organization because he chose to be vulnerable. He chose to emphasize things like empathy. And slowly, because when you see it right at the top, and those values really ripple out to the entire organization, and it really created that shift in the culture. But equally with so many women leaders, whether it's an Indra Nooyi, whether it's a Michelle Obama, whether it's a Lena Nair, who's my favorite example, CEO of Chanel, of a woman who is so beautifully creating that balance between leading with strength, but also at the same time leading with compassion. In fact, very recently, I watched an interview of hers where she was talking about how she's made it an effort to speak to every single one of her 20,000 employees in Chanel. Wow. And really take the time to listen to their stories and remember their names, and whether or not that actually happens, but or not, but the fact that she's putting in that effort,
at least that message is going out that, these are the qualities that you can exhibit as a leader. You can take interest, you can be compassionate, you can be more and more inclusive, and
yes.
You can still be at the top of your game.
Yes. So I think more and more leaders are role modeling that and showing all of us that it's possible. And more, when you ask people, these are the kind of leaders we're inspired by. And again, if I give you the research behind this, when you talk about charisma, what works so charismatic as an individual, as a professional, as a leader, any which way, the two essential variables or qualities that you need to have is actually same thing, a fine balance of power or competence and warmth. So on one hand, exactly as we're discussing, on one hand, you showcase that strength, you showcase that clarity, that assertiveness, but at the same time, you're balancing it with these deeply human, warm qualities like kindness and compassion. And when you have that mix, that is what constitutes a charismatic leader.
That is so beautifully said, like earlier you were saying that when you were talking about that research where these feminine and masculine traits were kind of given out to people to choose what they would like in their leader. You also mentioned that these traits could be embodied by anybody.
Yes.
It's not just a man quality or a woman quality, but the way this world is designed, there's a lot of confusion also. If a man is soft, if a man is more warm, more empathetic, more compassionate, more kind, or generally cries, all of these qualities makes for a weak man as to how the world sees a man as. So these are somewhere entrusted upon us as male and female qualities, but of course they can be embodied by anybody. And now the recent conversation is that we are trying to find a balance. Individuals, those balance these two traits, like you said, reasonably well for them to be be at the top of their game, right? So what I want to ask here is that how much space have we really created for the men who are in touch with their softness and the women who are very assertive and are authoritative in their nature?
Yeah.
Have we created those cultures? Have we created those families? Have we created those workspaces where these individuals can go with these qualities? Those are, in a way, considered their weaknesses.
Yeah.
If a woman is very loud, very assertive, very clear about what she wants in professional settings or even at home, she is termed as difficult. If a man who is softer, who cries, who's vulnerable, goes out in a workplace or even at home, they are dissed as somebody who's weak. So tell me, what is the space that we are creating for them, and how do we kind of enable more and more spaces for them or more and more opportunities for people like this?
I think, the short answer to your question, Shobha, is yes, the culture is slowly shifting, but it is not shifting as fast as we would like.
Or as fast as the world is changing.
Yes.
Women in the last 20 years, you see so many women are now educated. They hold PhD degrees, they hold big titles and all of that. So the world has changed for women. Like they have made a huge space for themselves. They are flying planes and they are going to the moon and all of that, right? But yet we have to have this conversation sitting on a podcast. I mean, it's at one place, it also seems very funny,
Yes.
So take me through this whole landscape.
No, absolutely. I think, and that's one of the downsides of a patriarchal system, that it does confine both men and women into roles that are very limiting, because it is as important as it is for women to show up as they would like to show up. It's equally important that men also have the freedom to show up and express the entire range of human emotions, which, like you said, can include sadness, can include vulnerability. And when we don't give men the space to do that, and in fact, if you look at the stats, they're quite telling. When you look at, for example, the rate of suicide in the world globally, the suicide rate for men far exceeds that of women. Now, why would that be? Because at least as women, there is some level of acceptance as far as sharing our emotions or being vulnerable and talking about what is impacting us. Men don't always have that kind of freedom. So they keep it bottled in. They may not always seek out solutions, because the prevailing belief is, as a man, you need to be strong, and asking for help would be seen as a sign of weakness. So we have scores of men experiencing this suffering alone, and really feeling the full brunt of the consequences as a result of that. So absolutely, this is something we need to shift, so that both men and women can, in fact, experience the full range of human emotions and have the space to be able to do that.
Statistically speaking, there's a saying which is, in a way funny, but it's very sad, that in the bargain of growing in your careers, men got heart attacks and women got depression. What it goes to say is that when you go on to the wheel of ambition, men who exhibit these masculine traits and are performing and are overachievers at workplaces, like statistically also, we have 85% more CEOs than women, right?
Yes.
So speaking of that, they traded their cardio health for that ambition, and women, when they exhibited these qualities of growth, they got depression. So what are your thoughts there? Do you feel women, especially high performing women, are somewhere having a compromised mental health? They are somewhere carrying a deep level of sadness, a deep level of resentment, which is masked by them being this very strong, confident, bold persona that they portray at their workplaces and even at families and in relationships.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think with anything that we want to change, there is one piece that we can own as individuals, and we can definitely ask Shobha, as women, what can we do differently so that we don't suffer in all of these ways? And then the second piece of this is looking at what can collectively as a society we do so that women are not experiencing this level of depression. Because you're right, whenever we betray ourselves, it's that self-betrayal that really leads to that depression.
Are we really aware that we are betraying ourselves to achieve our goals? Take me through this whole idea of building clarity for your professional goals and generally dreams for yourself, for your future as a woman versus, let's say, a man. How are these two things different? And are we not aligned with ourselves when we design a dream life for ourselves, or when we want to work towards our dreams? What are we betraying?
So, if I give you my example, for example, Shobha, the first decade of my career, I was working on Wall Street, working in the corporate setup, and I was conditioned to play by those rules, and I was just running, just doing, and no amount of achievements, no amount of accolades or validation was really giving me a sustainable sense of happiness or success. You hit that milestone, you feel good for a while, but then again, some kind of insecurity kicks in, and then you feel like, no, you have to do more. And so then you get back on that treadmill, and then you're again running. But at no point you feel like, okay, I have now arrived, and now I can rest, and now I can tell myself that I've done the best I can, and I can give myself a pat on the back, and maybe even take a pause. That point does not arrive when we're just running. For me, the shift happened, Shobha, when I, especially nearly at the end of that decade, I decided I wanted to live differently. I wanted to find the kind of work or work in a way that gives me a greater sense of meaning and purpose. I didn't know what the answer was, but I knew I owe it to myself to find out. Yes, I was in a place of privilege where I could pivot, leave my career on Wall Street behind, move to India, spend a couple of years just figuring out what that is. And I went on this spiritual quest. And the biggest thing that happened when I went on the spiritual quest for a couple of years is I learned how to slow down, pause, and turn within and ask myself, what do I really want? Let's set aside the expectations of the world. Let's even set aside expectations of my parents, as much as I love them. Let me just set aside all of that and just ask myself, what do I want? What brings me joy? What makes me come alive? And how can I, even through small changes, small shifts, start to live and work and lead in a way that honors that? And only when I started doing that, Shobha, did I then finally feel like, yes, now I am not betraying myself. I am honoring myself. And once I started honoring myself, that is when I could really live and lead holistically and not experience all of those things that we're talking about today in terms of whether it's burnout, whether it's
a breakdown. Yeah, because a lot of leaders that I talk to are experiencing, especially when they are closing in towards their 40s or mid-40s, a sense of breakdown, when you have it all, but you feel like you've lost yourself in the process. It's not a woman versus man issue. It's like a issue for everybody,
absolutely,
right? Whoever is on that, like I said, wheel of growth, it is an issue for them that you feel like you have it all and yet you feel that you've lost yourself in the process.
Yes.
Particularly for women. How do you kind of see this? And having it all, like you said, means that you had recognition, you had name, you had validation coming your way, you had accolades coming your way, titles, etc. Right? That is having it all looks like. But losing yourself, what does it look like? Also, how does that human being, a woman particularly who has lost herself, look like when she shows up at workplace or at home? What I'm trying to ask you is that what are the signs of losing yourself as a woman at your workplaces, in your home, in the different roles that you play?
I think, Shobha, there are many signs. Physical is the most obvious one, because burnout is it's not just because you are doing too much work that causes you stress. Burnout also happens when you're doing too little of the kind of work that energizes you or that brings you joy. It goes both ways. It's not just about working too much. It's doing too little of what really makes you feel alive. So physical, there are physical signs. Equally, I think there are those spiritual and emotional signs where you're working, but emotionally, maybe you feel empty, maybe you feel hollow, and maybe you start to question, what is the point of all of this? Why am I even doing this? So I think all of these signs definitely are things we want to pay attention to. And in terms of how can we, especially when we're feeling like, our life is taking us off track, maybe we don't have even the language to really understand it or to diagnose what's happening, but we know something is off and we want to start to bring it back on track and feel more aliveness. Asking yourself simple questions, I think, really helps. And sometimes the more powerful the question you ask yourself, the more powerful is the answer you will get. So, for example, I think the easiest question we can all ask for any woman who's feeling exhausted, burnt out, empty, lost. look at the last week, couple of weeks, maybe even month. Ask yourself, do an energy audit of how you have felt, let's say for the last week. When were those moments in your day when you actually felt good in your body, when you felt alive, when you felt some sense of joy? Really ask yourself, what were those moments, and see if there's a pattern that you recognize. Maybe you felt alive every time you were having a meaningful conversation with someone. Maybe it was when you were helping somebody else, when you were mentoring somebody else. Maybe you felt
or you were just gardening.
Maybe you were just gardening. Maybe you were doing something creative with your hands, gardening, cooking, maybe or any other kind of creative expression, music, dancing. Maybe it was while doing nothing. Maybe whenever you were just still, when you wake up in the morning and you're sitting in your balcony and you're just enjoying a cup of chai, maybe that was those 5 minutes when you really felt like, this is good, this feels good. I think asking ourselves, what are those things that bring you energy, that make you come alive, I think is the most important question to ask. Equally, on the flip side, Shobha, we need to ask, what are those energy vampires that draw our energy? Are you walking around specific kind of people who are sucking that energy out of you? If so, what are those kinds of personalities that really, don't sit well with you? And often it's because typically when people are, when we experience that, it's because we see our values being violated in some way. When we believe in something and when somebody else is expressing the opposite of that value or is violating that value. So let's say if you believe in fairness and you see somebody being unfair, or you believe in punctuality and you see someone who's always showing up late. When our values are violated, that really is very draining. But again, it's telling you something about yourself, about what's important to you. So what are those things that are sucking energy out from you? And as you go forward, Shobha, without making a full, completely turning your life upside down, ask yourself, what are some small changes, even if it's a 1% shift I make in my week, by adding more things that bring me joy, even if it's for 5-10 minutes in the day, and by creating those boundaries for myself so that I'm minimizing exposure to things that drain me. Even the small shifts are ways in which, even as strong, ambitious, independent women, we can start to take our power back.
That is so beautifully said. One point that I always want to drive down in my podcast, The Journey Within, is to explore who you really are, get into this mode of self-discovery, really get in touch with yourself, that who you are today. And I think this energy audit that you talked about is such a beautiful way to do the journey within, to go back to yourself and just check for yourself what drains you of your energy and what kind of helps you build it, or helps you retain it, or helps you create joy in your life. And if we could answer these simple questions, there could be 1,000 questions that can lead one to meet their real self, their inner self, take the journey within. But I think this is one beautiful dimension, and that is what I try to explore in every conversation with our guests. And we've had almost 200 episodes now. And people tell me that, how many times or in how many ways the same point can be driven. And right there, it is one another way. Every person has their own way to look at one thing and, design the most practical, sometimes the most simple way for themselves to understand who they are. And I think if they take away this point from this conversation, there's already a lot of value and meaning, because how many of us are sitting at the end of the day or end of the week and calculating where we are draining our energy? A lot of people ask me also this, that, how do I become more aware of who I am, or how do I come in alignment with what my real values are? And I think that question right there is a big indicator of what's important to you. Right. The next point that I want to get to, you talked about boundary, you talk about boundaries, not exposing yourself to things that drain you. How do women be assertive about the boundaries that they want to create for themselves? And first up, what are the healthy boundaries that every woman must create, irrespective of whether they want to have a big career or not?
I think, look, when it comes to boundaries, definitely 100% taking out time for yourself, even if it's 5 minutes, creating time for self-care.
That message needs to be rehashed. I don't know how many times,
Yes.
because as women, I've recently become a mother.
Oh,
And
yeah.
all of this makes so much more sense. Not that it didn't make sense earlier. Even earlier, as women, you don't allow yourself, you don't give yourself permission to celebrate yourself, spend time for yourself, do things that really weren't important to you. Like if I think of my journey, when I started out, my ambition was obviously strong and I wanted to do one thing after the other. And whatever money I was taking home, one day I really sat down and I realized that and I started getting envious of my brother who would earn, and his first priority would be to bring a phone for himself, to buy the latest phone, to buy the latest laptop, to buy the latest whatever. And I realized that I've been earning from 5-6 years before he really started earning. Why do I not have a good phone? Why do simple things,
Yes.
Yes. I'm talking of like say 12, 13 years ago. So I was of course much younger. So these were very primitive examples through which I could understand that I'm not choosing myself. And why do I envy him? Why do I school him? He's doing the right thing probably. Why do I, why am I telling him to be more responsible and in the name of responsibility, not choose yourself? Because that's what has happened to women over the years. In the name of being responsible one for the family, at the workplaces, we've not chosen ourselves. So say more about that.
Yeah. And look, Shobha, choosing yourself is going to be different, is going to look different and feel different for every individual, depending on what's important to them. For some people, it may be about buying something for yourself that is a way for you to validate yourself, that your needs matter as well. For some people, it may just be allowing yourself that rest, that much needed rest, that, recognizing that how important sleep is, and instead of being on your phone, actually putting your phone away and allowing yourself that good night sleep. For some, like I remember for me, when my baby was young, when my child was a baby rather, I remember initially, I would just tell myself, if I can just, and I would feel a little bit of guilt, of course, but I would tell myself, if I can just, just step away it could just be for 45 minutes, but go to a nearby cafe and, just have some alone time where I can just be.
You used to do that?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And it was a highlight of my day where it wasn't really about doing much. It was just about being with myself.
I really hope that people who are listening to this conversation, they take out these simple, small practices, small choices, very conscious choices that you've written a book also on, that they can take in their day. Everybody is chasing out for these big answers of how do I become happy, why this is not feeling like happiness, why the joy is sucked out of my life. If they look at these simple practices and choices that they make every single day, one of them could be taking yourself out for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yes.
And while I'm speaking this, while I'm saying this, it is all so funny because it takes, when it comes in your awareness, it really doesn't take a lot for you to connect with yourself, right?
Yes.
We are finding answers in books. We are finding answers at retreats. We are finding answers listening to all these spiritual masters. We could do all of that. But it really takes some simple, practical choices, conscious choices that needs to be made every single day. You talked about two things, you talked about women who want to, let's say, material things, you want to buy those things and feel that your needs matter. And the second is that what did you say? I'm sorry.
Or you take care of your health, you prioritize your health, sleep, exercise, or nutrition is a form of self-care. Or you really, allow yourself to spend time on those hobbies, those interests that just time for yourself that brings you joy. So you can give yourself time, you can give yourself energy, you can give yourself something physical. These are all ways, small ways in which we can take care of ourselves.
I'm trying to understand your answer in Indian context for women. As women, like I said, I couldn't buy, not that I couldn't afford, but I didn't buy. the phone that I wanted to buy, or the car that I could afford, or whatever else. I wanted to buy things for my mother, for my brother, for my father, etc., right? At that point. And that is a very Indian context also. A lot of girls are conditioned, not maybe forcibly or not in a very apparent manner, but the slow conditioning is there that you have to be the responsible one, you have to be a good daughter, you have to be a good sister, you have to be a good whatever, right? A good student, etc., etc. And on the second side, when we talk about taking rest, I see women who are strong. We're talking about that, strong, independent women, career women, let's say. They hardly get to rest. They have to go and perform their duties at their workplaces. When they get back home in India, they have to do all the household chores as well. They have to do the cooking, or even if they are privileged and well off, they have to still monitor what's being cooked. It's never a man's thought that, oh, what's for dinner? At least you have to put in that thought. You have to order those groceries in, even if somebody else is cooking. And for a majority of women, the reality is that they have to come back home and they have to cook and they have to wash their laundry and they have to do all of those things. And the childcare is primarily a woman's responsibility in Indian context. At least it is that in Indian context. I know there are Scandinavian countries and all where you have paternity leaves and where fathers are also picking up a lot of slack. But in India, that's not the conversation. So in this environment, in this setting where a woman shouldn't buy the things that she likes, that will tell her she matters, or a woman shouldn't take time to reset and rest, because there is no time if you want to have a career and if you want to have it all, like we were discussing, you want to have a career and a family as well. What are the top 3 things that a woman must do to survive, thrive, and sustain herself in an environment like this in Indian context?
Yeah, and you're right. I think there are so many cultural factors that make it especially challenging for women. And you're right. In India, I mean, it's globally, honestly, Shobha. I've seen globally as women, we do carry an unnecessary or an exorbitant amount of mental load from juggling so many things, from our work to our...
Sorry, I have to stop you there, and I'll say that it's not even unnecessary, because if you don't do it, then who else will?
Who else will?
Because it's not a man's responsibility. It's not seen as that. So how does one escape that? You know?
So look, step 1 is awareness always, and recognizing that that this is happening. Let me tell you a quick story. So the other day I was coaching a consultant. She works for one of those big 4 consulting firms, and very senior. And she was talking about how she's feeling overworked and overwhelmed. And especially consultants, I mean, they're working around the clock. There are months where they're just literally working around the clock. So we looked at what she was doing on the weekends. So I just asked her, so what are you doing on the weekends? And she's like, I end up spending a lot of time just cleaning up after my children. My children are fairly young, and, their toys are all over the place. And I'm a bit of a clean freak, and I like being super organized. So I end up spending, a few hours just organizing their lives. And I had to very gently just ask her, is this the best use of your time? Given that, throughout the week, you're already working so hard. And I hear from you that spending quality time is important for you. Is this the best use of your time? And my next question was, are you willing to make small trade-offs where you let go of some of the quote-unquote messiness in my life so that I can focus my energy on where it really matters? Because to your point, Shobha, you just said, but we have to do all of this. But do we? I think it begins with us questioning, do I have to?
Really?
Especially, I think, where we have more choices, do we have to? And so for her, it was a bit of a wake-up call where she's like, yeah, actually, maybe I don't.
Absolutely. You wouldn't believe how much time I've created for myself in my personal life by just choosing to not organize things at home.
Yeah.
I'm okay if things are there on the mat or if things are scattered on the dining table. I mean, I do like a tidy home. Nobody would not like it. But I mean, if it comes at the cost of me, being around all the time and making or ensuring that everything is squeaky clean, probably not. And it's okay to drop a few balls. We don't need to juggle them all.
Exactly. And even so, the next thing is, okay, so what can you let go of is step one, being aware and then letting go of that. But equally, I think even where the second thing is, where can I invite others in to share some of that load, whether it's hired help or asking my family members. And again, I'll give you another example of another woman I was coaching recently also, and she's again complaining that it's just so tough for her because she doesn't have full-time help, and she really wants full-time help, but she cannot find anyone reliable. And again, my question to her, my simple question to her was, tell me, where are you willing to lower your standards a little bit so that you can get help sooner, even though it may not be perfect? Where can you lower your standards? And while we were speaking, we came up with some more ideas, because I've heard, like, especially many senior women leaders that I coach, they've created these systems in place where instead of just relying on this one person, they're working with, they've hired, multiple help, so that even if one drops the ball, you have somebody else to pick it up. So there's simple ways in which we can invite help, but again, lowering our standards a little bit, because you will never find someone who's perfect. You will never find someone who is everything.
Forget perfect. I think you'll never find somebody who will do it like you, because that's what the burden a lot of us take.
Yes.
Or they do it well, but it's not like me. And that's what is, and I in my line of work, in my line of coaching, when I try to understand and deep dive, where is that thought coming from? It comes from the very origin of things, like at home, your fathers would not let a help cook meals because she doesn't cook it like your mother. It's not that she's bad or she's good, but she doesn't cook like your mother. मुझे तो उनके हाथ से ही रोटी खानी है. रोटी तो वो ही बनाएंगी. This is a very Indian context I'm talking about. So there's certain things that, not that they cannot happen and they cannot happen well, but it's just that conditioning that, it has to happen through this one person only.
Absolutely. Right. And I think the third thing, which is probably the most important one, is an honest and courageous conversation with your partner. Or if you don't have a partner, maybe you're staying with your parents or whoever is the most important person around you, having an honest and courageous conversation with them around how where they can do more, where they can step up as an equal partner, as a more supportive person around you, because we cannot do it all. We absolutely cannot. And if in my case, I think I'm so fortunate that I have a spouse who actually doesn't even do 50%. I would say he goes above and beyond to really take care of whatever things that he feels good about taking care of. For example, with my son, all of my my son's school activities, all of that, he's just taken full ownership of that. So it needn't always be 50-50 in everything. It's not about doing that equal split. It's not about equality, but being equitable. So being fair and being more just, that fine, you step up where you can step up. Let me step up where I can step up, so we can make this work. That honest and courageous conversation has to happen. I just don't know how without it we can, especially as working women, how can we continue advancing, because Ruth will always hold us back.
But tell me one thing, Bhavna, if somebody is not fortunate to have such a partner or a spouse or an environment where even after having this conversation, this courageous conversation that you're talking about, a solution is reached at, what should a woman do in that context? Or in simple terms, why do strong, independent women struggle in love?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
No, it is. I know I've put you on a spot right there, but This needs to be answered, right? We are seeing a barrage of women who are in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're not finding partners. And if you see the bank balance sheets, if you see their career titles, if you see the accolades and name and fame, they are right at the top of their games. Something is going terribly wrong for them to not feel fulfilled and not feel happy even after doing so much. And this woman might be struggling in one area of her life, that is love and romance, but she's again a great daughter. She's doing things for her home. So she is being taken from in every possible way, but not given to. So tell me more on this.
Given that I'm not a relationship expert, never professed to be.
I get it, but speak from experience, right? You've been a part of, like I said, those boardrooms where you have seen these struggles happen up close, and the choices people make or the choices that they don't make, and what do those choices really cost them?
Yeah. Like as the saying goes, I think it was Sheryl Sandberg who had originally famously said this, that the best decision, the best career decision a woman can make is the person that she chooses to marry. So, to your question, how do you have those honest and courageous conversations? I feel like the best time to make that decision actually is right at the beginning, when you're just making that decision and you feel good that this is the person I could see myself spending my life with at that time, to make that decision, also keeping this in mind, like how supportive is this person going to be of my career? Because if I was to give you my example, prior to getting married, if I look at previous relationships, one of the reason they did not work out as well is because I had this intuition. And it wasn't just an intuition. I could see very clear signs as well that I don't think this person is going to be as supportive of my ambition. And I am an ambitious woman in the sense that I do want to make an impact in the world. And if my life partner is not going to be utmost supportive of that, I don't think this is going to work. So I made a conscious choice to step away from those relationships. And with my current, with my spouse now, I could tell right from the beginning that this is an individual who is going to be very supportive. And so as much as possible, I think when we're trying to find at the beginning stages, if we can make that decision, then we can save ourselves years of agony and anguish later on. I don't have a good answer for you in terms of how do you ensure that you actually find such a person, but all I know is finding such a person is so important. Shobha, as women, and even as men, I think this cuts across genders, we get so conditioned to be tough on ourselves. And we go through our lives thinking, if I'm tougher on myself than anyone else can be, that's how I'll be successful. That's how I'll make it. And as women especially, we set the bar so high. We have this high bar of perfection in terms of, we're going to be the superwoman who's going to have a stellar career, and we're going to have our home is going to be spick and span and look like it belongs in the Architectural Digest. We are, and we're going to be fit as anyone. And in every way, we have this high bar of perfection. And because we're always measuring ourselves against this high bar, we always feel like we're falling short. And that this feeling of I'm falling short, then starts to eat away at your self-esteem and how you really feel about yourself. And it does not serve us. And Shobha, now all the research around self-compassion is treating yourself as kindly and with as much love as we would treat anybody else that we love, whether it's our child, our partner, a friend, a parent. When you turn that love towards yourself, that love and kindness, that's self-compassion. And all of the research now says that the kinder, the more compassionate you are with yourself in all of these small ways, such as even actually choosing what you want to eat rather than just going with what everybody else is picking, is an act of kindness towards yourself, because that's you saying, my needs matter, my preferences, my choices matter, and I'm going to honor that. Even that is a micro act of kindness towards yourself. And with every micro act of kindness, you build up your self-esteem, you build up your confidence, you tell yourself, I matter. And with that self-compassion, then you are able to show up more and more as a courageous and a confident woman, and with the courage to live your life more and more on your terms.
The next conversation that I want to bring in, we have talked about boundaries a bit. We've talked about women, strong women, especially independent women struggling in their love lives. We have talked about generally how the society at workplaces, at homes are catering to such women, and what we need to do more there to kind of make more space for such women. Now let's talk about a man's world also. Do you think in this generation, men really know how to love, respect, and honor a strong, independent woman?
Yes, such a beautiful question, right? Because I think, as the saying goes, we've done so much. We put in so much conscious thought and effort behind becoming strong and independent ourselves. But are we equally putting in the same kind of conscious effort in raising or coaching men to handle or to be equal partners to these strong and independent women? And I think there is a lot we can do there. I think you're right. I think the focus has been so much on on ourselves, really,
and empowering women as such. Women empowerment is a conversation I'm hearing from last 2 decades. But is the world ready for these empowered women? Like, one side of the question is that why do strong, independent women struggle in love? But the other side is, does the other gender accommodate a space to love, respect, and honor such a woman?
Yeah,
it's a two-pronged question. It's not only on this side, right?
Yes.
Like what a woman can do to tailor make her own life and find solutions for even the man and the family and the workplace and everything. Why does a woman only has to find solution for everything?
Yes.
So what role does fall on the other person? If a man says that I support a strong, independent woman, what does that support look like?
Yeah. One thing that's coming to me is there's this really famous mindfulness teacher. He's now passed away. His name was Thich Nhat Hanh, really famous Buddhist teacher from Vietnam. And one time somebody had asked him, tell me what is the key to a loving relationship? What is the key to really having a beautiful and strong relationship? And he said, go home today and have this conversation with that person that you really love, and just ask this one question: how can I love you better? How can I love you better? Because in simply asking that question, you first of all are conveying to the other person that you care about treating them better, and you want to love them or care for them in the ways in which they want to be loved and cared for. So you're not assuming, you're asking. So whether it is at home or in the workplace, I think this is a beautiful question, and we'll get to what the question could be in the workplace. But I think at home, another variation, of course, of that question is, how can I support you better? I think it is the most beautiful and powerful question that we can ask each other. Again, not saying it's only, men should be asking this of their partners, and of course, I would, encourage them to do that. But equally, for both partners to ask each other, how can I support you better? And just be completely open to whatever the answer is, and adapting to really being there for your loved ones in those ways, I think is really, really powerful. Equally, in the workplace, I always say, it's important that we don't assume that our female colleagues, that we know what is the best way and they want to be supported. If we can actually ask them, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a peer, whether it's someone who's reporting to you, whatever the nature of the relationship is, but if you can actually just ask, how can I support you better? And then be open to the answer. That alone will start to shift that your awareness of the situation and how you can show up in a way that where you can be an ally.
So instead of guessing what your role should be, instead of listening it on the podcast or reading it in a book, because every person has different needs.
That's right.
And every person has a different expression that they like and stuff like that. So instead of guessing all this, of course, there are few grand gestures that a lot of people would like. There are few things that most of the people would like, but there are also very specific needs that every woman has.
Yeah.
So instead of guessing, you should rather ask and follow through with action. Till asking, I think a few men still do that, but following through with action is something where I think men need to do a little more work. Asking is one thing, and making it happen. How do we build a more clearer understanding on what is kindness and what is people pleasing? Where am I being kind just to please somebody or validate myself, feel nicer about myself, boost my own ego? Or is it really just an act of kindness? That's a softer quality, a feminine quality that I have as a woman.
Yeah, that's such an important question to ask, because you're right. I think that, it's a really fine line between kindness and people pleasing. I think one of the things definitely you want to ask is, in saying yes to someone else, are you saying no to yourself? By honoring somebody else's needs, are you violating your own needs? And I'm specifically using the word violating because sometimes, of course, you are going to put the needs of others above yours. If I have a sick child, I'm going to do whatever I can to take care of that, of my child. That doesn't violate my needs specifically, but if in constantly saying yes to others, for example, in the workplace, I hear from so many women who are ambitious but struggle with saying no, who are will continue saying yes to their work, or will have a tough time pushing back and saying no. By not saying no, you are doing a disservice to yourself, because by constantly taking on more and more and more, it's depleting your energy. You're not able to do your best work. And over time, it doesn't really, position you in the best light. People start to form a certain image of you, or start to take that for granted, that this person will always do it, so let's give it to her. So it may even hamper your chances of growth. So in those cases, if you're only saying yes because you find it hard to say no, there's a part of you that feels that no. And I think, Shobha, to make it really simple, how it feels, how that yes or no feels in your body, I think is a really easy way to know. Is it truly kindness, or is there, am I just doing this for validation or for people pleasing? Because when you are being kind when it's kindness, when it's true kindness, you feel light, you feel expansive, you feel good, because kindness, maybe, it's truly an honor, it's truly a value that you honor. But if it's just people pleasing, it's validation, there's something, you may be saying yes on the outside, but something inside of you will feel constricted. You will feel like you're shrinking. You feel like you're, betraying yourself. You're making yourself smaller in order to make somebody else, to help somebody else, or to make somebody else feel better. So I think being very mindful of how that yes or no feels in your body is that awareness that we can build to be able to tell, okay, am I doing this with the right intention, and am I really aware of the consequences of this, yes or no?
So awareness, self-awareness is one very important point that you're driving home with most of your answers, So self-awareness is of key importance, of course. As an emotional intelligence and mindset coach, I do work with people dealing with certain emotions. And particularly when we talk about heavier emotions like guilt and shame, a lot of my clients are women in that space. They're dealing with guilt and shame of something or the other, whether it emerges from the family that they came from, that is their parents and siblings, or the family that they went to, that is their husband and the rest of it, or the workplace that they go to. So why do women feel guilt and shame more than men, or just generally?
And specifically, you're saying guilt and shame in what kinds of situations?
In making, like you said, honor your yeses, making choices for yourself, doing right by yourself, not doing disservice to yourself.
Yes.
People pleasing versus kindness, to understand that difference.
Yes.
It does come with a certain degree of guilt.
Yes.
In some women, there's a lot of guilt.
That's true.
If you have a parent, you have a lot of guilt of making them okay, whether they want to be helped or not. And even if they want to be helped, then they want to be helped in a certain manner that you are not able to count for. Basically, to make everything look nice and be okay, if that is not happening, you feel guilty in one way or the other. So do women feel more guilty?
Shobha, with a lot of what we're talking about today, so much of this just boils down to that social and cultural conditioning that we've unconsciously just inherited and accepted as the truth. For example, I think to your point, right from when we were little girls, what was the definition that was given to us consciously or subconsciously? What were the messages that we got from everywhere, whether it's from our family, from the media, from all kinds of messages around us about what does it mean to be a good girl, or what does it mean to be a good woman? The message universally all around us was to be a good girl or a good woman, you need to be submissive, you need to be very relationship oriented.
Adaptable is the word that they conveniently use.
Adaptable. In research, the distinction is communal values versus agentic values. So women, we've been raised with communal values in the sense that where we essentially got the message that our worth is really determined by how we show up with our relationships and how much we do for others, how communal, community-oriented we can be, how and all of the other things are an offshoot of that. Being humble, because it's not about, I don't want to attract attention to me. It's about, it's about everybody else always. And for men, it's agentic values. So with agentic values are, agentic means agency, power. So we teach our boys to own their power, to, go out there and take charge and take risks. And whereas with our girls, we're always protecting them, and, we don't encourage them to do all of that. And that conditioning, this communal versus agentic values, it gets so deeply embedded in us. For example, to give you one example, when we go to, come into the workplace, that sense of, as a good woman is humble, is so deeply embedded in us. And in my work, I see this, that as women, we feel guilty, or we feel like there's something wrong when we talk about our work or talk about our achievements. We think that's being self-promotional. And that goes against everything that I've been taught about what it means to be a good woman. A good woman should be humble. But when you do that, what happens? If you're not owning your work, taking full ownership and pride in your work, other people don't either. And so a lot of that guilt, Shobha, is coming because we feel like we are not honoring everything that we believe constitutes what it means to be a good woman. So a lot of this is about becoming aware of this bias that we've just internalized and starting to question that. So much of us starting to question that. And it takes a lot of unlearning because I think we both know this is so deeply ingrained, and that's why we feel guilty when we rest. We feel guilty when we say yes to ourselves. We feel guilty when we say no to somebody else. But I think once we realize in all of these ways, we're actually giving our power away. And we have to start through small choices, Shobha. We have to start taking our power back.
We did talk about those small choices in the earlier part of this conversation, Bhavna. Now, to culminate this conversation, let's say somebody who has heard this podcast, they have taken out some value from it and they are going to be applying it in their life, and they're going to be, work towards more self-awareness, building clarity of who they want to be more assertive about their choices, not feel guilty, and the things that we talked about in the duration of this podcast. If a woman is making these conscious choices,
yes,
how her life will change, let's say, in a span of 30 days or a span of 3 months?
So one thing I'll say, Shobha, one of the most powerful choices you can make is to form a strong relationship with your future self. So again, this is backed by research, so this is not just my opinion. There are two ways as women we can anchor our identity. We can either say that I am who I am because of my past. Everything that I've experienced, everything that I've been through, it has shaped me. So if I need to understand who I am, I need to look at my past. The other choice is I am who I am because of all the values, the goals, the dreams, the hopes that I work towards. And that is what is shaping me. And all the research now says that we are shaped much more powerfully by whatever vision we have of our future self than we are even as compared to our past. The past will only play a bigger role if you don't have any sense of what your future self looks like. Then of course, then that past conditioning, the patterns will keep replaying over and over again. But if you, as a woman, you want to remake yourself, into the kind of woman that really you feel that sense of pride and joy in, my simple question to anyone watching this would be, describe your ideal future self to me. Describe, how does she show up in the world? How does she treat others? How does she treat herself? These simple questions. What does your ideal future self look like and feel like? How does she show up in the world? And then the next question related to that would be, what are some 1 or 2 or 3 daily habits that this person has, that she engages in every single day? So if in 30 days, because that's the number you gave me.
Specific question.
Yeah. If you want to be able to remake yourself in 30 days, start with those 2 questions. What does my ideal future self look like? And what are the daily habits she practices? And then every single day, just start with maybe just one habit. Start with that. Maybe the one thing you say is, my ideal future self is someone who doesn't feel guilty about practicing that self-kindness. And she takes out at least 10 minutes, just 10 minutes every day to just be with herself or to give something to herself as a micro act of kindness towards herself. And then every single day for the next 30 days, make it a sincere commitment that you're going to do it, and give yourself a check every single day. At the end of 30 days, once you see those 30 check marks, the power, the validation, the self-validation that you will give yourself will be so beautiful, so powerful in really helping you show up with greater confidence, greater happiness, greater sense of fulfillment and pride.
So beautifully said, Bhavna. Bhavna, as we are nearing to the end of this conversation, tell me, what is the one most important decision that a woman is afraid to make but really should?
I think one decision every woman can make, Shobha, is to ask for help. Whether it's
Couldn't have said it better.
asking for help at work, with whatever you want help with in your career, or asking for help from your spouse, asking for help from any loved one. I know we're always afraid to ask for help, but if we do, we make our lives easier, and it's such a beautiful way of honoring ourselves.
And we also don't resent others that they don't do more. As much as we want to be asked, how do we like to be loved?
Yes.
We should also present that opportunity to the others to show them that, this is what I probably need.
Yes.
And it will simplify our life so much, the person who stays, stays, who doesn't doesn't stay, at least we're sticking true to our values.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Now, the next question that I have for you is that asking for us also portrays us as a soft woman, soft person. So what is that one idea about a soft woman that needs to die today?
That softness is weakness. Softness can be your biggest strength. And indeed, it is a strength. Because softness is you caring for yourself. Softness is you caring for others. And asking for help, Shobha, I would say, is not softness, it's assertiveness. And when you pair that assertiveness with softness and warmth, that is the winning combination.
Very well said. Bhavna, in this conversation, we talked about the world that is there for women today, which has its own challenges. We talked about how we as women choose to show up and how we can better those choices, how we can elevate our game, how we can ask for help, how we can have it all is something essentially we're talking about, right? Tell me one thing, is the idea of having it all unrealistic for a woman?
Yes and no. I'm going to give you a yes and a no. I think you can have it all, but maybe not all at the same time. And you need to give yourself that grace in accepting that maybe you cannot have it all at the same time. So for example, and I'm sure, Shobha, you can relate to this as a young mother. When you're a young mother, it's possible your career may have to take a back seat. But that's okay, because that's time you want to devote to yourself, to building that beautiful, precious relationship with your child. But then there'll be a time when you will be able to ramp up in your career. So over the course of our lives, if we take a bigger picture view, yes, we can have everything that we may desire. Yes, you can have that career, but doesn't have to always be a linear growth, but you can have the career you desire. You can give to yourself. You can pursue all manner of interests outside of work as well.
You can have a relationship.
You can have
good marriage.
Yes.
A family.
Yes.
Children.
Yes, absolutely. I think you can have all of that. It's just, I think it's important that we give ourselves that grace of letting go of some things during certain seasons of our lives when physically, emotionally, spiritually, it is not possible for us to give 100% of ourselves to everything.
Now, my last question that I ask to all my guests is their definition of success. What is your definition of success, particularly for women?
My definition of success for everyone, and this has come from my own life and experiences, is true success and a sense of fulfillment that you experience within comes when your passion meets your compassion. And what I mean by that is when you are able to bring the best of you to the world. You're able to show up as the best version of you, and you use the best of who you are to serve others, to make a difference in the life of others in your own capacity. Doesn't always have to be grandiose. Maybe it could be on whatever scale that feels good to you. Maybe you're choosing to make a positive difference in the people around you. Maybe it's just, your team, or maybe it is a larger mission that you have. But when your passion, the things that you're interested in and that make you feel more alive, when you apply that towards a bigger goal, compassion, wanting to help others, wanting to alleviate the suffering of others, that's, to me, that's success. That's fulfillment, that's happiness, and that's inner peace.
Wow, beautiful. I think through this podcast, I've created a library of conversations where every guest has come in and given their take on success. And it is so beautiful for me to learn that how different high-performing individuals see success differently, what their markers are, what are the questions that they ask themselves, because the people who are watching this podcast, they might be boxing their idea of success into this one thing. And if they're not able to achieve this one thing, it's not a successful life led. So if we can unbox that, and if we can show, let's say, 200 possibilities, because I've had 200 episodes so far, I aim to go to 1,000 or more. That many possibilities for others in very crystallized, clear form. I think it's a beautiful contribution. So thank you, Bhavna, for joining me for this very wonderful conversation. And I can't think of a better day to release it on than Women's Day, to empower women to, in a realistic manner, not in the present, that what you call making it a presentation and shining it on a stage manner, but really something that really works in everyday life, practical manner. Thank you for doing that. And that's all. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Thank you.
Inspired.
Thank you, Shobha. This was a wonderful conversation. And I think we touched on so many different aspects and realities of the life of any woman or man, for that matter. And I'm glad we were able to delve into these important areas. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Awesome. Now, to the viewers or the listeners who are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, I'm really sure that if you have listened to it with intent, you would have gotten at least 10 takeaways that you can apply in your life right from today. So share this conversation with somebody you think is looking for some hope, is looking to redesign their lives, especially a woman if she wants to remake herself, create a new identity, operate from that identity, or just a woman or a girl who is stuck with certain ideas in her life and is feeling that life is not moving for them, or women who are facing some patterns in their life, if they are having repeated downfalls or breakdowns in one or more areas of their life. Share it with them to help them see life from a different perspective, from a more hopeful perspective, and help them build a better version of themselves. Make use of the comment section to let me know if you have any more questions for us. We'll try to take them in the future episodes as suggestions. Let me know if there are any specific guests that you want me to invite on this podcast. Also, any kind of feedback or suggestions that you have for us, please mention those in the comment section. Like I said, share this conversation, help this conversation reach more people by liking, commenting, and sharing this with others. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Namaste.